The Emperor's New Clothes. Many years ago, there was an emperor who was so excessively fond of new clothes that he spent all of his money on dress. He did not trouble himself in the least about his soldiers, nor did he care to go either to the theater or to hunt, except for the opportunities. Then he displayed his new clothing. He had a different suit for each hour of the day, and as of any other king or emperor, one is accustomed to say, he is sitting in council. It was always said of him, the emperor is sitting in his dressing room. Time passed away very merrily in the large town which was his capital. Strangers arrived every day at the court. One day, two rogues, calling themselves weavers, made their appearance. They gave out what they knew on how to weave materials of most beautiful colors and elaborate patterns, and clothes manufactured from which should have been wonderfully propriety of remaining invisible to anyone who was unfit for the office he held or who was extraordinarily simple in character. These must be indeed the splendid clothes, thought the emperor. Had I such a suit, I might at once find out what men in my realm are unfit for their office, and also be able to distinguish the wise from the foolish. This stuff must be woven for me immediately. And he caused large sums of money to be given in advance to both the weavers, in order that they might begin their work directly. So the two sham weavers set up two looms and affected to work very busily, through the reality they did nothing at all. There was not a single thread on their looms. They asked for the most delicate silk and the purest gold thread, put both into their knapsacks, and then continued their pretended work on the empty looms until late at night. I should like to know how the weavers are getting on in my cloth, thought the emperor. He was, however, rather worried when he remembered that a simpleton, one unfit for his office, would be unable to see the manufacture. It would be better to send somebody else to bring him intelligence about the work before he troubled himself with the affair. All the people throughout the city had heard of the wonderful property the cloth was to possess, and all were anxious to learn how wise or how ignorant their neighbors might prove to be. "Oh, send my faithful prime minister to the weavers," he thought, after some deliberation. "He will be best able to see what the cloth looks like, for he's a man of sense, and nobody can be more suitable for his office than he." So the honest prime minister went into the hall where the knaves were working with all their might at their empty looms. He opened his eyes wide when he found he could see nothing, but he did not say so. The impostors requested him very courteously to be so good as to come near the looms, and then asked them whether the design pleased him or whether the colors were not very beautiful, and then they pointed to the empty frames. The old prime minister looked and looked, but he could not discover anything in the looms, for the simple reason that there was nothing there. "Good heavens," he thought, "can it be that I am a simpleton and unfit for my office? I never thought of myself. Nobody must ever know." "Well, sir," said one of the knaves, still pretending to work, "you do not say whether the stuff pleases you." "Oh, it is admirable," replied the old minister, looking at the loom through his spectacles. "This pattern, these colors, yes, I will tell the emperor how beautiful I think it is." "We shall be very much obliged to you," said the impostors, and then they named the different colors and described the pattern of the pretended stuff. The old minister listened attentively to the words in order that he might repeat them to the emperor. The knaves then asked for more gold thread and silk, and more money, saying that it was necessary to complete what they had begun. However, they put all into their knapsacks and continued to work at their empty looms with much apparent diligence as before. The emperor now sent another officer from his court to see how the men were getting on, and to ascertain whether the cloth would be ready. It was the same with this gentleman as it was the minister. He surveyed the looms on all sides, but could see nothing but the empty frames. Doesn't the stuff appear as beautiful to you as it did the Prime Minister? Asked Rose, the Emperor's second ambassador, taking the design and colors which were not there. I'm certainly not stupid, thought the messenger. It must be that I'm not fit for my good, profitable office. However, no one shall know anything about it. And accordingly, he praised the stuff he could not see, and declared that it was delightful in both colors and patterns. It will please your majesty, he said to his sovereign in return. The whole city was talking of the splendid cloth which the emperor had ordered to be woven at his own expense. And now the emperor himself wished to see the costly manufacture whilst it was still on the loom. Accompanied by a select number of officers from the court, among whom were the two honorable men who had already admired the cloth, he went to the crafty impostors who, as soon as they were aware of the emperor's approach, went on pretending to work more diligently than ever. Is the work not magnificent? Said the two officers already mentioned. If your majesty would only look at the design and the colors. At the same time, they pointed to the empty frames, for they imagined that everyone but themselves could see the exquisite piece of workmanship. This is indeed a terrible affair, thought the emperor to himself, for he could not see anything, absolutely nothing. Am I a simpleton, or am I unfit to be emperor? And he felt awful. Oh, the cloth is charming, he said aloud. It has my entire approval. And he smiled most graciously and looked closely at the empty looms. All his retinue now strained their eyes, hoping to discover something in the looms, but they could not see any more than the others. Nevertheless, they all exclaimed, "Oh, how beautiful!" and advised His Majesty to have some new clothes made for splendid material to be used at the forthcoming great procession. Magnificent, charming, excellent, resounded on all sides. The emperor shared in the general satisfaction and presented the impostors with a ribbon of an order of knighthood to be worn round their buttonholes, and the title of imperial weavers. The rogues sat up the whole night before the day on which had 16 lights burning so they might see how anxious they were to finish the emperor's new suit. They pretended to roll the cloth off the looms, they cut the air with their scissors, they sewed with needles without any thread in them. See, Lady Lass cried, the emperor's new clothes are ready. In the morning, the emperor, with all the grandees of his court, came to the weavers, and the knaves raised their arms as if to act of holding something up, saying, Here, your majesty's trousers, and here's a scarf, here's a mantle. The whole suit is as light as a cobweb. One might fancy one has nothing on at all when dressed in it. But that is a great virtue of this delicate cloth. Yes, indeed, thought all but one of them to see anything. If your imperial majesty will graciously please to take off your clothes, said the impostors, we will fit on the new suit in front of the mirror. Accordingly, the emperor undressed, and the rogues pretended to array him in his new suit. They seemingly fastened something here, and smoothed the pleat here, and made it so closing a buckle and trying to look untrained, the emperor turning around from side to side before the looking-glass. How splendid His Majesty looks in his new clothes, and how well they fit, everyone cried out. What a design! What colors! These are indeed royal robes. The emperor began to feel cold, for he was not wearing anything, but he turned again in front of the looking-glass in order that he might appear to be examining his handsome suit. The lords of the bedchamber felt around on the ground as if they were lifting up the ends of the mantle, and did not dare to betray anything like simplicity or unfitness for their office. So now the emperor walked under the high canopy in the midst of the procession through the streets of the capital, and all the people standing by and those in the windows cried out, Oh, look how beautiful the emperor's new clothes are! What a magnificent train! How graceful the scarf hangs! No one would admit that they could not see these much admired clothes, because in doing so he would have been declared himself a simpleton and unfit for his office. Certainly none of the emperor's various suits have ever excited so much admiration in this non-existent one. But the emperor has nothing on at all, said a little child. Listen to the voice of innocence, exclaimed his father, and what the child had said was whispered from one to another. The emperor, who in his nakedness felt the cold badly, was vexed, for he knew that the people were right. But he thought the procession must go on now, and the lords of the bedchamber took greater pains than ever to appear to be holding up a train, although in reality there was no train to hold. When the procession was over, the emperor sent for the two impostors, but they had in the meantime quietly departed.